Happy Friday. We are here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. I'm Corey Bratta talking with you this afternoon. Kind of a special drop-in, I guess you could call it. Talking about this Iowa-Penn State game tomorrow because, of course, we've been previewing it all week. We sat down with Mark Rogers and a couple of fellows over from SB Nation on the Penn State side earlier this week. If you didn't catch that preview, head over to Iowa Football, the Voice of College Football on YouTube to listen to our breakdown of the big game tomorrow. Of course, we also sat down with Tom Kakert from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. Of course, Tom Kakert, a longtime writer for Rivals, HawkeyeReport.com, used to be Super Hawkeye back in the day. He has been around the block many times. He's seen many Penn State-Iowa games. And we just talked about this series. I want to call it a rivalry because I believe it is, even though there's no trophy associated with the game, and I'm pretty sure both fan bases would say it's not an official rivalry. But, man, the history of this series is spectacular. We talk about that series during our podcast, which we also cut up and threw up on the Iowa Football, the Voice of College Football channel. So if you missed any of that, hang around on YouTube and check that out in lead up to tomorrow's big game. But the reason I'm checking in with you now is because I felt I needed to spend a few extra minutes addressing specifically what this game means tomorrow and what I believe will happen tomorrow. Okay? We've talked about a lot of different things associated with this matchup. Certainly, the 1985 Iowa-Michigan game has been brought up by many people. 1 versus 2. It was the last time Iowa was played as a top 5 team against a top 5 team inside Kinnick Stadium. That will end tomorrow because it's a top 5 matchup in Kinnick. Iowa, Penn State. Iowa ranked number 3 in the AP and coaches polls. Penn State number 4. I think, as far as summing up my thoughts on tomorrow's game, I think Josh Pate, who I really enjoy Josh's work over at 247 Sports, I thought he summed things up quite well. I do disagree with him on a couple small things, and that really, those small things kind of dictate where I'm making my picks, which will come out this evening. Josh brought up an interesting point. If you're going to beat Iowa, you have to avoid turnovers. We know that, right? Because Iowa's killing teams with turnovers. They're killing them. 7 turnovers against Maryland. 2 pick sixes against Indiana. 3-4 interceptions against Brock Purdy at Iowa State. Safety against Kent State. Fumble recovery inside Colorado State's 10-yard line a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. So turnovers are key. They are a must for Iowa to win football games. We have not seen them win without turnovers. Now, we haven't seen them lose. We did see them, I believe, break even in the Colorado State and Kent State games. They threw an interception against Colorado State, and they fumbled the ball. Ivory Kelly Martin fumbled the ball against Kent State. Here's the difference. Those are group of 5 teams. This is a top 5 Penn State squad coming to town. I believe that if Iowa does not at least come out even in the turnover battle, they're not going to win this game. Okay? I have a very hard time seeing Iowa win this game with any deficit in that turnover margin column. If Petras throws for a couple picks and the Iowa defense forces 1, Iowa loses. Iowa has to either tie or win that turnover margin to have a chance, okay? And I don't think that's asking for too much. I mean, we've seen Iowa dominate. They tie, I don't know how they're tied. I didn't even look at the numbers this week, but they are tied nationally for turnover margin. I don't think fans, if you're an Iowa fan and you're looking at this game and thinking, man, I don't know where the turnovers are going to come from, we said that going into Maryland. Now, you could say Maryland is less disciplined. That's absolutely the case. But was it Taulia? Taulia Tagovailoa had been playing very clean football heading into that game. What does he do? He comes out and throws 5 interceptions. Iowa's going to force turnovers. If they don't, they're in trouble. But I believe they absolutely will. Now, here's the other thing. Something that Josh Pate brought up that I absolutely agree with, and that is, does James Franklin have the humility, the modesty to make a play call or 2 or 3 or 4 in this game that indicates that he is willing to win another 12-10 battle or 18-15 battle without taking a lot of risk. And what I mean by that is you've got 4th and 1. You've got 3rd and 10. As Iowa fans, we're always saying, go for it if you're Iowa, right? Throw the ball downfield on 3rd and 8. 4th and 1, take your chances, right? 9 times out of 10 Iowa fans are lobbying for that, and I get it. And I agree with it. I've been at the forefront of that. But here's what Penn State needs to avoid. They need to avoid taking unnecessary risk on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. Let me give you a prime example. Penn State's got the ball. Their own 40 on 4th and 2. What do you do if you're James Franklin? You're tied, maybe midway through the second. Maybe it's 3-3 in the second quarter, and it's 4th and 2 from your own 40. You punt the ball. You punt the ball. That's the correct play against this Iowa team, because this Iowa team wants to force you into making a risky decision, and they're going to make you pay. This defense has been so opportunistic this year that the key in my mind in this game is Penn State needs to play under control, all right? And I don't want to use the word conservative because that sounds, I know Iowa fans hear that word and they immediately think of Kirk Ferentz. But here's the deal. Penn State needs to go out of their way to be safe. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to take shots, but you don't take shots on 3rd and long. You don't take shots on 4th down. You punt the ball 9 times out of 10. Now, if you're at the Penn State 35, that's a little bit different, right? But there are circumstances in this game, I believe there will be circumstances, where James Franklin, as the head coach of this football team, is going to have to make a decision. Are we going to roll the dice on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 from midfield or whatever it is, or your own 40, or are we going to punt it? And to me, Penn State ought to punt. To me, that's the right decision against this Iowa defense. Here's why I'm picking Iowa. I don't believe James Franklin will make that decision. I don't believe James Franklin has the modesty, to make that decision and punt the football. I don't. I would say the same thing about end of the first half. 1 minute to go, you've got maybe a timeout or maybe 0 timeouts at your own 20. Run the ball. Take a knee. And that's not typically what I'd say about a Penn State offense because they got skill position players everywhere. But again, Iowa's going, I believe, really the only foreseeable way I can envision Iowa winning this game is by producing turnovers, which again, I'm not trying to say that they've got a 25-30% chance of winning the game. I believe they will win this game because of that. I have tremendous faith in Iowa's ability to create turnovers. So Penn State's got to do everything they can to not allow any stupid plays at any time in this game. And that's tough to do against this team. But play calling is within your capabilities, right? It's within your power. So again, whether it's 4th and 1 at your own 40, midway through the second, punt the ball. Whether it's 1st and 10 at your own 20 with a minute to go in the first half, take a knee, run the ball, get into halftime. Avoid stupid plays, devastating plays, turnovers that can kill you. Avoid giving Iowa short fields. Now, here's one thing people aren't talking about. We were talking about it 2 weeks ago, and the narrative is sort of shift. Everybody wants to discredit the defense for giving the Iowa offense short fields to work with. Let's also remember Tory Taylor is a huge part of why Iowa's had short fields this year. So regardless of what you do offensively, if you're the opponent, Iowa is still going to pin you back with punts because they've got Tory Taylor. But I'd rather roll my dice with Tory Taylor than I would this Iowa secondary, this Iowa defensive line, and certainly this Iowa linebacking core. Iowa is healthy. Okay, they've got 2 really solid pieces on the back end in Riley Moss and Matt Hankins, and they've got a few safeties over the top to do you damage. I'm going to consider Dane Belton here a safety. Of course, he slides up in that 4-2-5, but Kayvon Merriweather's coming into his own, Jack Kerner, and we even saw Sebastian Castro make some plays last week. Iowa's going to win this game because Franklin is going to take risks, and Clifford, I think Clifford plays into Franklin's persona. Although Clifford is much improved, he's only thrown 3 picks on the year. That's more picks than Spencer Petras has thrown. 3 times the number of picks that Spencer Petras has thrown. So I believe Clifford will be baited into mistakes, just like Iowa has baited Tagovailoa, Penix, Purdy. He will be baited into mistakes, and part of it is because his head coach will put him in positions that he shouldn't be putting him in. And that's my prediction. I think Iowa wins this game. I'll give you a final score tonight. We'll release it right here on our channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm this evening as part of our Week 6 picks here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Huge game, monster game. Now, I said it earlier in the week. This is not a do-or-die game for Iowa. You lose this game, you're still in control of the West. You lose this game, you still can make a playoff berth. You win out. I mean, seriously, you win out and win in Indianapolis against whoever you play, you're in my mind. And if not, well, let's not even have that discussion. It'd just be a disgrace if they didn't get in at 12-1 as a conference champion. But it's still a huge game, okay? You win this game, you've solidified your spot as the number 3 team in the country. You're firmly in the playoff poll once the new college or the first edition of the college football playoff polls come out, which is pretty soon, right? Week or two. So it's a big game. A lot on the line. I said it too earlier in the week. I don't get nervous for this game like I got nervous for Iowa State. The Iowa State game is a game you hate to lose. For me, this is a game that I'm not scared of losing this game. I'm thankful for the opportunity. And I think these players are thankful for this is an opportunity for this team to make a statement nationally. Okay? Again, doesn't do anything. It helps them in the Big Ten, but it's not a groundbreaking win within the conference. I think most teams, most fan bases within the conference respect Iowa and believe in Iowa. But if Iowa wants to gain some national recognition, which will come into play later in the season, although I've downplayed rankings up until this point, they will come into play later in the season. Iowa needs to win tomorrow. Biggest game at Kinnick since 1985, by the numbers at least. I will say this. There were some other big games at Kinnick, okay, and other big games. I mean, if you just want to talk about games with major implications over the past 10 to 15 years, I mean, think about 2009 at Ohio State. I mean, Iowa was a one-loss team. You win that game, you might be in the BCS national title game. Probably not, but you're at least in the Rose Bowl in 2009. Go to overtime with James Vandenberg at quarterback and you lose. That's a huge game. So I'm not going to say this game is bigger than that from a overall standpoint. But again, we're talking about numbers and we're talking about a home game. That was on the road at the Horseshoe. 2015, Big Ten championship game. I think we'd all agree that game was bigger overall than this game. No question. You win that game, you're in the playoff. They lose by the outstretched arm of what's-his-face, L.J. Scott from Michigan State. And even 2017, let's not forget, 2017, Iowa comes off that win against Ohio State, and you beat Wisconsin on the road. Josh Jackson has 2 picks. If you beat Wisconsin in that game, Iowa's got a good chance at winning the West that year and going back to the Big Ten title game. So I would make an argument that game was as big or bigger than this game. There have been a number of these types of games, okay? 2018, Penn State on the road. That was a big game. So let's not get totally ahead of ourselves and put all our chips on this game. This is a big game. I think it's the biggest game in Kinnick. A lot of Iowa's big games, unfortunately, have been on the road. This one's at home. It's an opportunity. You've got Bob Stoops. You've got Reggie Bush. You got Matt Leinart and the crew from Fox there in the morning. You've got a Torrey Wynn, the big wrestler who's a former Iowa football player who's going to be making a guest appearance on the show tomorrow. This is an opportunity. The whole country is going to be watching. I believe Iowa will win. Tune in later tonight to From the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube for my Week 6 picks, including my pick for number 3 Iowa versus number 4 Penn State. Appreciate you joining us for a brief check-in on this Friday afternoon, and we are just over 24 hours away from a massive showdown inside Kinnick. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you soon.